The medical world is still searching for the roots of psychopathy, hoping to one day cure it or even prevent it. Over the years, countless theories have emerged, some occult, others rooted in childhood trauma, especially the bond between mother and child. And then there's the theory that it's hereditary, passed down in our DNA, like a curse embedded in blood. But whatever the cause, one thing is clear. People affected by this condition don't feel like we do. They don't experience grief, guilt, or empathy the way most of us do. At first, that might sound like a blessing. No anxiety, no heartbreak, no fear. But a life without empathy? That's a life without limits, a life without boundaries, and in some cases, without mercy. In the early 1970s, the streets of Bucharest were cloaked in fear. Women walked faster. Doors were double locked. Whispers of a monster circulated in quiet cafes and factory halls. He was named the Vampire of Bucharest, or the Murderer of Blondes. But his name? His name was Rîmaru, and for 4 years he stalked women in the dark, biting, slashing, mutilating. This isn't a tale from centuries past. This happened during the communist regime. Under a government so controlling, it seemed unthinkable that someone could act so freely and brutally. And yet, he did. Rîmaru was born on October 12, 1946 in Corabia, a small town in Romania. He was the eldest of 3 children, having both a younger sister and a younger brother. His childhood wasn't marked by a single dramatic event, but rather by a disturbing emotional absence. From a young age, Jon showed clear signs of emotional detachment. He was often described as cold, withdrawn, and unable to form normal bonds. Not with other children, not with his teachers, and not even with his own family. He rarely played, rarely smiled, and often stared blankly when spoken to. While most children were developing a sense of empathy and social norms, Jon was already retreating into isolation. He exhibited early signs of sadism and cruelty, reportedly harming small animals and showing fascination with the idea of people being hurt. Family dynamics didn't help either. His father, Flora Rîmaru, was a violent and volatile figure, abusive, criminally inclined, and known for disappearing for days at a time. Jon's mother, on the other hand, was submissive and fearful, and Jon reportedly treated both her and his sister with cold disdain. In fact, he was known to avoid eye contact with them completely, and never spoke more than a few words to them. Despite these behavioral red flags, Jon went unnoticed by the system. His academic performance was mediocre at best. When it came time to pursue university studies, he barely qualified. He didn't earn a place at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine in Bucharest because of his high achievements. He got in only because there were more available spots than applicants that year. An administrative technicality that would give him access to a world where his obsessions could fester in isolation. And that's exactly what happened. After moving to Bucharest for university, Rîmaru briefly took up boxing. His coach described him as physically strong, well built, and capable. But there was something disturbing beneath the surface. When paired with opponents weaker than him, Rîmaru became unusually aggressive, lashing out with violent intensity far beyond what was necessary. But when matched with someone stronger, he didn't even try. He would cower, retreat, refuse to engage. His coach quickly took notice and began assigning him only stronger opponents, hoping to challenge him. But instead of growing, Rîmaru grew resentful. Enraged at being unable to dominate, he quit the sport altogether. His classmates at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine also noticed something was wrong. He was erratic, distant, and seemed to live in his own shadowed world. He repeated academic years, struggled to function normally, and was even caught harming himself with scalpels and dancing on broken glass in his dorm. His spree began quietly and then escalated violently. May 1970. A 32-year-old woman walking home from work was attacked on the street. She was hit with an iron bar, dragged behind a fence, and assaulted. She survived, barely. June 1970. A young woman was found unconscious behind a hospital. She had been assaulted and bitten. Human bite marks were left on her breasts. April 1971. A waitress walking home at night was struck from behind, dragged into a construction yard, raped, bitten, and left in the rain to die. June 1971. A 26-year-old woman was found dead under a bridge. Her body had over 50 stab wounds, and she had been beaten on the thighs and breasts. September 1971. A 36-year-old woman was walking home. She was found with a crushed skull, torn clothes, and vicious bite marks. She died from blood loss. Every attack seemed to follow a ritual. The victims were women, blonde, walking alone at night. The attacker used a metal rod or axe to strike them from behind. Their clothes were torn, and bite marks were left on their breasts, thighs, and sometimes their faces. In some cases, the bodies were moved or placed in water, as if being washed or hidden. One woman was found still alive. She had dragged herself bleeding into a phone booth and gave the first clue. "He beat me like an animal." The communist regime wanted silence. The press didn't report it. The public wasn't warned. Women kept dying. A task force was assembled. More than 6,000 people were investigated. 2,500 apartments searched. And hundreds of suspects detained. Yet, nothing pointed to the monster hiding in plain sight. That was until one stormy night in 1971. In October 1971, during a violent storm, Rîmaru broke into the dorm of a young waitress. He assaulted her, bit her, and fled into the rain. The victim survived, but he dropped something. A medical certificate, labeled with the registration number traced to the veterinary medicine faculty. From there, the police began cross-checking student lists with blood types and criminal records. One man stood out, Rîmaru. He was brought in. Inside his dorm, investigators found bloody dags hidden under his bed, women's hair, clothing, and other disturbing items, multiple documents with fake names, and his own journal. The journal being filled with sexual violence fantasies and rambling notes about the moon, women, and death. When police finally arrested Rîmaru, they were met with something unexpected. He didn't resist, he didn't panic, he didn't speak. He just stared. Sitting across from investigators, Rîmaru was disturbingly calm, silent, detached, almost robotic. He offered no answers, no reaction, no hint of guilt. At first, he denied everything. No matter how direct the questions were, his expression remained blank. It wasn't until the evidence became impossible to deny, the matching bite marks, the testimonies, the document he dropped. That's when his wall began to crack. Only then did Rîmaru begin to speak. Rîmaru told psychologists that he had hallucinations, that he was under moonlight influence, and claimed he was possessed during the attacks. He was diagnosed with polymorphic psychopathy, with impulsive and sexual dominance, but he was declared legally sane. The final psychiatric report concluded that his condition did not affect his judgment, and he was fully responsible for his actions. During the trial, he showed no remorse. When confronted with photos of his victims, he smirked. When asked why, he said, "I hate women. They're all corrupt." It wasn't just the brutality of the attacks that horrified investigators. It was the ritualistic nature of them. Rîmaru didn't only beat or stab his victims. He bit them, viciously, repeatedly, often tearing skin from their bodies. In several cases, it was reported that he sucked blood from open wounds, as if feeding off his victim's pain. These behaviors weren't just violent, they were animalistic, predatory, and deeply disturbing. It's this sadistic pattern that earned him the name the Vampire of Bucharest. To the public, he wasn't just a killer, he was something else entirely, something not human. In late 1971, Rîmaru was sentenced to death. In 1972, he was taken to Jilava prison. His last words were chilling. Call my father. He is the guilty one. He made me a criminal. He was executed then by firing squad. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. But the story wasn't over. Years later, investigators made a disturbing connection. Ion's father, Flora Rîmaru, had lived in Bucharest before, during the 1940s, and he had a criminal record of his own, including theft, assault, and attempted rape. When DNA testing became available decades later, the authorities re-examined several unsolved murders from the late 1940s. Cases with similar MOs. Women attacked at night, bitten, mutilated, and left in public places. The DNA left at the scene of several murders that took place in the Bucharest of the 1940s matched Flora's. He had been a serial killer, possibly the origin of the madness. It was later revealed that Flora used to visit Ion regularly in his dorm, saw his blood-stained clothes, and cleaned up after him. Some of Ion's tools were allegedly gifts from his father. Theories now suggest that Flora may have inspired, trained, or manipulated Ion, or that Flora committed some of the murders himself and Ion took the fall. Or worse, that father and son were both killers, part of a legacy soaked in blood. To this day, the full truth remains buried. Ion Rîmaru wasn't just a killer. He was a product of silence, of shadows, of a family legacy soaked in rage. He killed with his hands, but the system, the culture of fear, and possibly his own bloodline all sharpened the blade. And in the darkness he left behind, some say his shadow still walks Bucharest. Until next time, stay safe and stay in the light.